Welcome to the podcast series on technology and innovation in coaching, brought to you by the Association for Coaching, the world's leading independent body. I am Claudia, coach and entrepreneur and founder of eHuddle. In this AC podcast series, we are privileged to talk to coaches, academics, and entrepreneurs who will be sharing with us some of their research, findings, and experiences related to technologies that could help us democratize coaching, elevate the coaching practice, lower cost, or save time, among other benefits. This is a very broad topic, going from how technologies can support a coach or carry out a coaching process. We hope this series brings technology closer to coaches. Enjoy listening. Welcome to Carol Braddick. It is great to have you with us. Carol is a member of the FCC, author, also commended by Coaching at Work for her contributions in tech and coaching. Carol, I will let you tell us a bit more about you.
Thank you, Claudia. Thanks for the introduction and inviting me to speak with you today. Yes, through my work with the FCC and in my own practice, I have taken a strong interest in following the market of different types of technology that are available for coaching now and are coming into the market, and have a strong interest in supporting the coaching community and the different stakeholders in the coaching community on the learning curve about these new products and tools that we can use for working with our clients, for managing our coaching businesses, and also for our training and development as coaches.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I guess as a start, as coaches, why should we look at technology?
I think there are a few reasons to consider looking at technology. If we use what technology does well and does better than we can do, we can spend more time coaching and work with more clients and have the impact that coaching can have with the leaders and clients we work with. And at this stage, what we're seeing technology do particularly well and better than us is pull together many different types of data about a client and serve that up to the client and a coach for them to work with it in their coaching sessions. So tech may be able to help us have a deeper impact as coaches. We might see that impact sooner because we're following sources of data, and that impact might also be more visible both to the client and to his or her stakeholders in their organizations. And I think we, as coaches, we've always tried to meet clients where they are. And there's part of where they are is what is their relationship to technology? What is their use of technology? And how we can work within that and be responsive to their preferences, which could also include using less technology and treating coaching as a time to get away from technology. As practitioners, there is tech that can help us be more efficient so that we could have more time for coaching, but also help us be high touch in the way that we communicate with clients, keep your brand visible in the market and to grow your practice. And also to be easier to do business with, because some of the platforms and technology available to coaches make it easier to track engagement and provide that information, which is very important for the organizations that buy coaching services. And if we think about our profession is always in the spotlight for what are the outcomes that we deliver, and how can we make those pain points that the large organizations, which is where most of my coaching experience is, how can we help smooth out some of those pain points or maybe eliminate them for the large organizations that are working with a high number of coaching providers and coaching providers of different sizes. So I think it can help us in our coaching, in our coaching practices, and it can also continue to strengthen the profession.
Yes, so help us with those pain points, increase the impact. But I love how you include the client there, as in it might be that work with what the client already has, but also maybe they actually don't want or need time without technology. So keeping the client in that picture.
Yes, I think we need to be open to their first need to be aware of our own views on technology and whether that makes us lean in the direction of high interest or very strong avoidance, and how that might influence how open we are to learning about what is our client's appetite for using technology. Are they already on overload with all the different systems that they have access to from their organizations, which is often the case. Again, my experience is mostly with large organizations where leaders have access to many tools and may not even be using some of them. So I have found myself in the situation where I mentioned to a client, did you know that you have access, for example, to Degreed, which has a wealth of learning content available to clients, but they're not pulling on any of those resources. So they have access to an article that's the same article that I might be sending because we've talked about that topic and those issues in our coaching sessions. So it's helpful to be aware of what could be, what's already there, and if there's appetite and just mental and emotional bandwidth to use that technology more.
Yes. So going on that same track, you work on transition coaching.
Yes.
So maybe we can use this field as an example to share how you view the use of technology in coaching.
Well, transitions coaching can apply to someone that has recently joined the organization from outside or someone that has moved to a different role within an organization. And I make that distinction to point out that the person that has moved in from outside the organization, I think large organizations in particular have made a lot of progress in how they onboard new hires. But there is still, particularly at more senior levels, some very big challenges that they face. And the data on retention of external hires, particularly at senior levels, is still not very good. So it's important to pay attention to, what is still left to do to support a transitioning executive, even though we have a better baseline because of the improvements in onboarding. So one of the things that I have used with clients who have both internal and external transitions is they are introducing themselves all the time, and now nearly all of that is virtual. They're introducing themselves, their role. They're making comments on what are some of their initial observations about the business or team they've been asked to lead. And so we used a few different tools to give them, on their own, practice in how they get those key messages across. It may be nothing more than a minute's practice of how they might introduce themselves at a new leadership team meeting when everybody's dialing in from different parts of the world. So they are putting themselves into that role with the communication and words and body language they use in that 1 minute, which has a big impression on the stakeholders that they're communicating with and sends a message about how they really have joined that organization and have taken over that role. So there are a number of tools that clients can use to sharpen those communications. And it's not just about, one of the things about that practice is it gets them thinking about, well, what is it I really want to say? What might I be holding back on? What am I not ready to say? Which are all important questions for someone who has just transitioned into a new role to be thinking about. So the tools prompt better thinking as well as they help improve delivery, even if it's just a 1 minute introduction. There's also, and Rob Cross recently described this in a Harvard Business Review article, how good evidence on how important establishing, growing, and diversifying your network is when you move into a new role, from the inside or the outside. So there's a combination there of looking at what the management literature says on the importance of networks, to work with a client about thinking about the different types of network he or she needs to succeed. And then there's technology provides the data of who are their contacts. Just so Microsoft Viva, for example, and there are other tools on the market that will pull that data from a client's diary and their contacts to create a picture, an analysis of who they're interacting with, how frequently, where their strongest connections are, and what type of role they play within the organizational networks. Are they a change maker, or have they and their team become a bottleneck? So given the importance of networks, we now have technology that can help us see what is happening in a client's network over the period of transition. And within those networks, there may be some stakeholder relationships that are quite challenging, which to date clients and coaches would typically work on using some type of constellations technique. We did that face-to-face, moving physical objects around on a desk to convey the movement and dynamics of different relationships. That can be done virtually using some collaboration tools, or it can be done via an even more immersive experience using virtual reality tools. So given the importance of those new or repositioned relationships, technology can be helpful in really addressing what are some of the challenges a client is facing in building and developing those relationships. I think the other challenge that transitioning into a new role creates is the overload of new information, new relationships, at the same time that a leader is trying to demonstrate his or her value and convey the message that you made the right decision putting me in this role. I got this. Come to me for this. So they are keen to demonstrate and deliver. At the same time, they need to be digesting and processing, what is this new role about? What did I learn that's different than what I thought it was going to be, and what the real priorities are? So there are some very simple tools that will prompt a leader who has just transitioned into a new role to be thinking about, okay, what are the real priorities here? And to help him or her establish that habit at a time when they may feel really driven to take action to demonstrate that the right decision has been made in putting that person into the role. So those are a few different ways I think technology can add something to transitions coaching on networks, prioritizing during a time of overload, communicating that you are in the role, and working on some relationships that may be challenging. And I would add, Claudia, while the data on the Great Resignation is still quite aggregated, it's hard to tell, is it specifically happening at this level, in this industry, in these geographies? Once it's broken out in that way, we'll have a better sense of where are the pockets of people leaving. And for every departure, that creates a transition, some kind of transition for other people. It may mean that some other leaders are moving into a new role, or a role may be split among different people, but every departure has that ripple effect. So I think there potentially could be a demand for transitions coaching, depending on how severe the effect of that Great Resignation is.
Yes, definitely. There was transition before, and there is more to come. And the way you've just painted it, with all these different tools that can, in a very subtle way, help the individual who's trying to adapt to this new position by doing some thinking, deeper thinking about the way they speak and what the message they want to convey. Also, this visual image of their system and like a constellation almost made automatically from their network And yeah, and all these things that help you with learning and prioritizing, it definitely paints a picture of how technology in a very subtle way can help, or by being introduced here and there can help with the coaching process.
Yeah, as you speak about it, creating a picture, Claudia, and this example goes back at least 4, maybe 5 years ago. I had seen a demonstration done by an HR leader from Cisco of how they had combined the network analysis and virtual reality so that a leader could almost step into what was a diagram of, in this case, it was a diagram of his networks, and could have that immersive experience of walking from here, a space that was, here are your contacts in Europe, here are your contacts in the US, and to see how rich and deep the contacts were in each area, and to see how different they were, to prompt that leader to be thinking about, do you have the networks you need to be able to be successful in your role? So it was a very compelling example, very rich visual example, pulled from actual network data, combined with the immersive experience to prompt the thinking about, why are these relationships so much more active than others?
Yes, the value of awareness, of creating awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So, as coaches, we all have different personalities, experiences, and strengths. How do you see this impacts the use of technology between coaches?
I think at this stage, since we're all in learning mode, myself included, about what technology is out there, how could it be used, the factors you just mentioned, personality, strengths, have an influence on what I think is the most important factor to pay attention to. What is our appetite and willingness to learn about technology? And willing to learn doesn't necessarily mean you go immediately to adopting and using, though I always encourage coaches to try something out, either a tool they use on their own, or they buddy up with other coaches and try it out and talk about how they might use it. So at this point, I think it's important to pay attention to how wide. Are you using a wide-angle lens when you look at technology, or have you narrowed the aperture because there's something that you're really uncomfortable with? And there are some very real risks to pay attention to with technology, and we tend to be exposed to the more negative aspects of technology, such as surveillance, such as the constant images we see of very frightening robots. So I think understanding what your own stance and appetite and attitude toward technology is very important, and to understand how that influences how willing you are to learn and experiment. One moment for me of recognizing my own relationship with technology was having sent an article to a client about an issue that we had talked about in a coaching session. And I got an email back saying, oh, this is great. This is really why it covers the points we talked about, made me think even more. This really is an example of why our coaching is working so well. And I thought to myself, if I had technology that uncovered that article, tapped it as something that was relevant for him at that time, and facilitated sending it, I would not have had as direct a role in doing that. And was I willing to step away from that? Was I willing to just let technology do that for me? And would that have had a different impact on the client? Would the client have had that experience? Would he have shared that thank you note with me? One of the reasons why I encourage coaches to experiment with technology, not only to see what does this product do, what can it help my clients with, but to understand, how do I feel? What's my experience using this? And am I willing to flex my role as a coach? What do I gain? What do I lose? And is there a different way to think about losses?
Yes. So what you're describing there is how having a partnership, when you said how would you be willing to give up that side of it, what I thought of was a part, of course, what we talk about in a partnership with technology, in which the technology by itself is not as good as, or the coach by himself is not as good, but both together can be better, similar to the chess experiment where the machine by itself or the human by itself wasn't the best was the partnership of them both. So in this case, I guess it would be having the technology giving you a library of articles that you could choose, and maybe you then go as a human choosing which one is the most appropriate, and but just facilitating that process of finding the articles that are relevant.
Yeah, so that is more efficient if it serves it up to me and identifies, hey, I've noticed from the coaching engagement you're doing, your client might like this article. Does that take me out of the process and make me feel like I have less agency here, that I have selected this article for this client and somehow am more deserving of that thank you note? So it raises some interesting, I think, dynamics that I think coaches can become more aware of if they do some experimenting on their own. And I think in general, coaches like to try out new tools and like to discuss them with one another, and then get to the discussion of, okay, how might you use that with a client? It's just that
Yeah.
we're more used to doing that with, say, assessment and diagnostic tools rather than something that is driven by technology.
Yes. You also mentioned bodying and getting support from your community in the process of adopting technology, so making it a shared experience. Can you expand more about this?
Well, when my colleagues in the FCC or I on my own are looking into a new product that we've heard of or something we read about, we will often try to at least have one other person on the call when we contact the vendor or the organization that is providing this, because we will be asking different things, looking for different things. We work with different kinds of clients, and so it opens up a richer conversation. And a vendor is more likely to pay attention to a group of people rather than an individual, because that's more economical for them. And so then you have more possibilities to try to customize the demo that you're being given rather than having the standard demo. You have more possibilities for setting up a customized trial run of a product. And that also may open up a contract with that vendor. I don't mean an official legal contract, but some setting of expectations that, yes, we will give you quite specific feedback, which I did just the other day to a vendor at very high level, all the way down to nitty gritty on screenshots I took of the tool. By partnering that way, both among coaches as well as trying to partner with the vendor, I think you can have a deeper experience with the technology and really understand what it might bring to coaching and what it might take to introduce it into coaching. And for coaches to be asking themselves, am I ready to introduce this? Vendors have an interest in their tools being used successfully. So many of them will offer accreditation programs, certification programs, and those are based on their best understanding of what it takes for a coach to be competent in using it and to be able to use it successfully. And so they're coming up with that. What's the average amount of time that a coach needs? But if coaches are partnering with one another for some additional experiences and can be very open with one another about how they felt about using it, what would a client really learn from this without the vendor in the conversation, I think they can prepare themselves even more and feel more comfortable introducing something to a client.
This raises a very important point, because as coaches, many of them work by themselves. And so this is basically a way in which coaches can collaborate going forward in the introduction of technology?
Yes, I think many coaches do work by themselves, and I'm an example of that. But I think we also have networks that we go to when we're on webinars. Where, for example, I'm encouraging people to connect during the webinars that I might do on that I've done on technology, for people to ask, "Hey, has anyone heard about this?" For people to share, "I'm using this. I'm just trying it out. Does anyone want to join me on an experiment?" So yes, while many of us do work on our own, I think we have a lot of goodwill within our broader community for people to proactively seek each other out and say, "Hey, let's try this together." In the same way that coaches will get together a group to read a book together and look at how that book might add something to coaching.
So technology is moving very quickly in the coaching space. Can you give us a bit of your thoughts of how you see this evolving?
Well, evolving in the sense that I can talk about what I think will happen next, but I always want to allow for the scenario, Claudia, of less use of tech in coaching, or maybe no use, but the bare minimum of being able to book your diaries. Again, to be open to whether a client is ready for more tech or wants to use less tech. Within that, I think our baseline has been reset, that we should all need to be comfortable using video. We will likely be working in an ongoing way, in a hybrid way. But remember that the video providers will continue to add more features to Microsoft Teams, to Cisco WebEx, to Zoom. There will be more collaboration tools available within those services. So our baseline of what is expected or could be used in virtual coaching has changed. In terms of other types of technologies, I think we're seeing the very early days of coach bots, that a conversation that is based on natural language processing and has been designed either by text or audio to engage a client in what is a fairly narrowly defined conversation at this point. It might be specifically setting goals. It might be prioritizing. So the scope of the conversation is still pretty narrow, but those are tools I think that will get better. We'll be able to take on more complex conversations, just like Alexa and Siri have been improved to take on even more complex tasks, and that we will see some opportunity to use that as a complement to coaching. And some clients may start using them on their own for their own self-coaching. So CoachBot is one. I think that there is technology coming out now that is going to be able to work on analysis of coaching conversations, which can be used obviously in coaching practices as well as in coach training. And to give us some insights on the relationship between the client and coach, and what kind of coaching style a coach is using. The world of psychotherapy is already using that kind of technology. Another thing that is already happening now, and I think we will continue to see more of it, is that a lot of products, tools, platforms are going to be called coaching. Whether they are giving advice, whether they are generating data, whether they are engaging people in a conversation, it will all be called coaching. And I say that I think this is going to be continued to happen because I don't think it's going to be practical to try to regulate that in any way. It's more practical and more realistic, I think, to simply get smarter about asking the questions about what does this tool or product do? What are the outcomes that it claims that it can affect? And how does it do that? So we will see a lot of things called coaching, and it's up to us to learn how to unpack what the value of the tool actually is. I also think there's the possibility for more insight into the impact of coaching in those companies that are fairly advanced in people analytics and having very rich data about their employees, so that they may be able to discern some markers of changes in a leader's behavior, in a leader's contributions, that may provide some insights into what is different as a result of coaching, or rather than and at a different point in a coaching program, serve up some indications of, is this person ready for coaching? Is this person already acting as a very active learner and contributor within the organization? But that will, I think, obviously first happen in those companies that are already pretty experienced with people analytics. It's quite a niche project for a people analytics team to take on, because there are much more pressing problems for them to be solving for the business that involve people analytics. But there is everything that we do at work when we're using these systems generates data that could be pulled into discussions about readiness for coaching, identifying who works with a coach, looking at what's happening during coaching, and looking at what happens after coaching.
Now that you're talking about a system deciding who gets coaching, that basically brought the thoughts, of course, to ethics and how there is a very obvious one there, which could be bias. But I guess trying to think about ethics in general, what are your thoughts regarding ethics, coaching, and technology?
Well, we're at I think, a point in ethics that has ethics at large and ethics in coaching, that there's a common complexity, that there are multiple ethics codes for using technology, for using AI, that have nothing to do with the coaching world. There are multiple organizations addressing those issues. So we start from a fairly complex place to try to figure out, well, what is unique to coaching? What specific ethical issues come up when you're using technology in coaching? And what is more generic and can be pulled from some of those guidelines and think tanks on ethics. I think some of the unique things that come up for using technology in coaching, and we have started doing some work on this within the FCC, trying to pull in input from a number of different stakeholders within coaching, which has been the foundation of the FCC to try to pull the whole system together, and have just released our first green paper. We're calling it a green paper because we know that it is bound for multiple ongoing iterations based on input from the system. But one obvious ethics issue is just the risk of misrepresentation of what a tool is actually capable of doing, and that we do see this conflation of products that are claiming that conflate data and insights and advice and action, when really the product generates data and presents it to a client, presents it to the employee, and it's up to the employee to gain the insights, and perhaps her coach to step in to help move from insights to action. So there is the issue of representation of capability, which is written into the codes of ethics for human coaches. But we also need to be concerned with technology products and how they are marketed. But going back to your real question there about decision making, for example, of who gets coaching, I think many companies, if they, first of all, may not be at the point where they have that marker of who's ready for coaching. That would take some time to try to define what are meaningful markers of that. But the identification of who is eligible to work with a coach is something that I think will always involve some human analysis and discussion among the people in the business, in talent management, in human resources. So I don't think we would ever eliminate that. I would be surprised to see any companies just go with a recommendation of it's these people and there's no reason to have any further discussion. And what we do see now is that thousands more employees are getting access for the first time working with a coach because of some of the mega scalers in the market that have the capacity to take on those very large contracts. So if anything, we're seeing that open up quite big, which is what you'll see that talked about as democratization of coaching. I think another ethics issue we just need to be aware of is, looking at the vendor. What is the diversity within the team that has designed the product? Who are the suppliers that the vendor works with? What happens if we can demonstrate that there is some bias within the algorithms and even within the communication about the product? Yes, we are going to be facing issues of who's liable when that bias is discovered. On ethics, another issue is diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. I think that relates to what I was just mentioning before about who is the design team that has created this product. Do they have an understanding of what kind of commitment and actions their customers are taking on DEIB, and how do they actually build that into a tool, and in addition respect the autonomy that we want to see in users of a tool, rather than build a tool to be addictive, which many tools, not necessarily coaching tools, but many tools are designed to hook users. How does it create enough friction that balances the high level of engagement you want with a tool with respecting and encouraging a user to make his or her own choices? So we could talk for a long time about ethics, Claudia, and I want to see if there were any other angles on it that you wanted to cover, or if you think I've overlooked something.
Yes, as you say, ethics could take a very long time. It's just a reminder of thinking outside the box and thinking of the things that could happen or go wrong when using a technology. I guess we could probably, as a last question, due to time, go into options and actions for the clients, for the coaches, sorry, as in how to embrace technology, how to learn, select, and purchase these technologies, and your thoughts about this.
Well, I think first, as we've covered, is to be aware of your own stance on technology and your own experiences with technology, and see how you can, as a learner, how you can get yourself into your most open learning stance, and not to discard all your concerns, but to raise your concerns with the point of seeking, is there a way to mitigate those risks? Is there a solution for those concerns? So that you go into it being open to learn, and then also perhaps as more of a problem solving approach. For some options and actions for coaches, there is still the option of coaching is a tech-free zone. We only use the bare minimum so that we can arrange our coaching sessions. And that may be best fit for some clients and some coaches. But there are also very small steps. It's not as if, while the learning experience at tech may seem overwhelming because there's so many different types of tools, there are very small steps to take to get started if one decides to bring tech in some way. We haven't yet talked about, there are some diagnostics on the market of digital wellness that could help with that conversation about a client's use of technology, and how you can prompt that conversation in a deeper and richer way using tools that look at digital wellness or attention management. so that you can include that as part of your contracting with a client on what kind of role might technology play in our work together. And another small start is to simply ask what a client already has access to. And I mentioned before, Claudia, that some clients don't even know what their companies have purchased on their behalf and have been trying to increase adoption of. So if a coach or coaching provider has a good relationship with the organizational sponsors of coaching, and that organizational sponsor is very proactive in sharing information about here's what we already have available within in this company. That way, what the client is familiar with, what the coach is familiar with from those different sources can come together, and you can look at, all right, this is what we already have. Before we introduce anything new, is there anything we can use from this that is going to help us with coaching? So there may be a number of feedback tools already in use within the organization, and I don't mean just the quarterly or semi-annual 360, but just platforms on which there are comments made about a leader. A colleague thanks a leader for something, comments on a presentation. So in a way, there may be some, I call them other coaches out there that are providing real-time feedback on a leader in a way that doesn't involve a coach's time, doesn't add to the expense. But that I would typically try to find out who else is out there that's commenting on you? How would we have access to that data? How do we bring that in a way that informs our coaching and gives us a real-time set of data about how you're coming across as a leader? Another way to start is to simply look at the feedback you've gotten from your clients, what you and your supervisor identify as ways that you could be more effective as a coach, and your own sense of a coach. If this is where I lose energy or don't see as much impact with my clients, or I feel that this step could be even more impactful, and to pull those observations together to look at, okay, what part of my coaching process can I modify? Can I experiment with trying this step a bit differently, almost as if you had a small startup within your total portfolio of coaching engagements that you're going to do some very thoughtful experiments with that have been informed by the feedback. So those are some ways, I think, to get started without trying to completely overhaul and think tech first, coaching later, because that's not the approach I would advocate. It's look at where could you be more effective, what's a small start to make, and what is the client's readiness.
Carol, thank you so much for your time today. As a closing, we usually do an exercise where if you can share with us 5 things you have around you and why they're relevant to get to know you better.
Well, I don't know how relevant this will be to other people. I recently won at a cat trivia contest during lockdown, and this is something I'm going to continue with. I have learned how to make jewelry, necklaces in particular. I'm speaking to you, Claudia, from Arizona. So I'm in the desert and I'm learning how to work with desert plants and digging up agave plants and transplanting them. And they really don't need much water. That's why they're desert plants. It's amazing how adaptable they are. And I have done a lot of volunteer work as a non-medical person at the vaccination and booster shot sites here in the U.S. So if you ever need it, Claudia, I know something about how to manage traffic control now.
Well, I was thinking more of those plants that don't need water to see if I finally get some plants that I don't kill in my house.
Another thing I'm trying is that as I partner with coaches on reading some books together, that we're trying to bring someone with a technology background into those discussions so that we can all be open to not only what could we use from this book in our coaching conversations, but is there a tech angle to any of the insights from this book?
Talking about books, I'll ask you also, a book that you would recommend on the topic of technology and coaching, and also a book that you're reading for fun.
A book that I'm reading for fun at the moment is called Her Little Secret. I just looked at it on Amazon the other day, and it's got 4.9 out of 5 rating, so that's pretty good. And I would describe it as a psychological thriller, which with quite a lot of suspense. So I'm very, very happy to recommend that one. And gosh, there's a whole reading list you could put together on tech. I particularly like Brett Fleischman's book. And of course, I can't think of the title at the moment. But what he encourages you to do is to be helpfully skeptical about technology in a way that will help you be a smarter user of technology. And I'm laughing as I say smarter, because one of the things he encourages you to do is, for every time a technology says it's smart, your toaster and refrigerator are smart these days. Take the word smart out of it and see how that changes how you look at that technology, and see how it changes your expectations of that technology.
I love that. I'm going to start trying that. Well, Carol, thank you so much for spending some time to us. If our listeners want to get in touch with you or learn more about what you're doing, what's the best way?
I think the best way is LinkedIn, particularly the Future of Coaching collaboration page. I post regularly on that, and I also post under my own name in my own account on LinkedIn about technology and coaching and leadership development. So I think those are the best ways. Thank you for asking.
Great. Thank you again for joining us.
Great to have the conversation, Claudia. Thank you.
So thank you for listening to another episode by the Association for Coaching. I have been Claudia Day. Our purpose is to help coaches in the process of navigating the new technologies that are arising in this field. If you would like to find out more, please follow us on LinkedIn or explore our webpage at theassociationforcoaching.com. There you can keep up to date with our latest episodes and conversations, as well as our digital learning calendar.